Hi, welcome to another edition of the Alan Rosenberg Show. 4 days ago, there was a request to do my top 10 favorite guitarists, and I did the video that day. And then I got some requests right away that said, hey, can you do more like this, and how about doing your top 10 favorite bassists? So I've been busy all week. Here's my first opportunity, and I just put it together now, and I hope you enjoy it. Now, again, like my guitarists, music for me, and probably for you, is more about what resonates with you emotionally. You know, if I got 5,000 plus albums and hundreds of bands that I love, but what are the ones that I listen to the most that really grab me? And then, of course, within that, the guitarist that's important in that artist, or in this case, the bass player. So this is not necessarily the best bassist technically, and we'll talk about those at the end of the video. These are members of bands that I go to all the time, but they're an incredibly important part of that band, and they are certainly amazing bassists. So I hope you understand the difference. It's not just about technical skill where you just marvel at somebody. It's more like, what do I feel like listening to a lot? You know, what hits me when I listen to it? And that's how I judge music most importantly. It's not academic, it's emotional. What do you feel like hearing? So without further ado, here's my top 10. I'll show you some runner-ups, and we'll talk about some of the ones that you're thinking about that may not have made the list. So at number 10 is going to be Phil Lesh. I've talked about the Grateful Dead in the past. I don't consider myself a Deadhead, but I got like every Grateful Dead studio album for sure, and a lot of solo records, and a lot of their live albums. And if you don't know the Dead, you could sample them with like a nice little collection, the best of Skeletons from the Closet, and if you want to go bigger, the Arista years, which I actually love. This is the Arista years, you know, Terrapin Station, Shakedown Street, and the rest. Or like a nice collection of the best of the Grateful Dead, which covers their whole career. There's a lot of compilations. But of course, the Dead is most well known for being live, and I have tons of live albums, and there's no way to keep track of all of them, but certainly like Europe 72, and this is a good sequel, Europe 72, Volume 2. This was a great one, you know, where you could experience Phil Lesh on the bass, a really important part of the Grateful Dead sound. And also he had that fluke where he wrote and sang Box of Rain, which happens to be one of my favorite Grateful Dead songs, if not my favorite Grateful Dead song. So we're going to put Phil Lesh in because he was a crucial, important part of the Grateful Dead. And we're going to stick him over at number 10. Phil Lesh of the Grateful Dead. We'll just stick this over there. How about? All right, we'll just stick that like that. Number 9. You know, I'm a huge fan. Talk about Wishbone Ash all the time. Glad that I'm turning them on to a lot of viewers apparently as well. And I love Wishbone Ash, of course, for their dual lead guitar and the weaving of their dual lead guitars. That's their most crucial part. But certainly their original bass player, Martin Turner, who really was, in a sense, the guiding light of the band. He was the main songwriter at a lot of the points, and he sang a lot of the songs, and he was right up front as the bass player, and he would actually stand in the middle. So he was kind of like the quote-unquote leader. He's a wonderful bass player, and I love Martin Turner, and he's at number 9 for me. And again, Wishbone Ash, almost best experience live dates Volume 2, and a more recent collection, Live at Rock Palace, 1976. I think I showed these when I just did the guitarists, and the 3 guitarists from Wishbone Ash that I put in. But Martin Turner is crucial, and we're going to talk more about the difference between oftentimes American bass and UK bass players within the band, and Martin Turner fits that pattern. In fact, let's talk about number 8, and that'll really kind of explain it. And that's the late, great John Camp from Renaissance. Now, Renaissance didn't even have an electric guitarist. They had an acoustic guitarist. Most of the lead type stuff was actually John Camp on bass. And if you really want to hear the best of Renaissance, you're going to hear like Turn of the Cards and Scheherazade, and most importantly, possibly live at Carnegie Hall, and then the album they did after that, which was Novella. Now, John Camp, Martin Turner, and a lot of the other bass players I'm going to be talking about, because I am definitely like an Anglophile, you know, the British bass players are way out in front. You know, they're not just playing like the root to keep the song going. No, 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 no. They are way out front, almost like another guitarist. And it's really, in a way, kind of a unique sound. And I love that style of the British bass player within the band, way out front like another guitarist. And Martin Turner does that. And John Camp certainly does that, because they didn't even have an electric lead guitar player in Renaissance. So John Camp at number 8. Number 7, well, we're going to be talking about an interesting guy. And I remember back in high school, he really became pretty popular. That's Stanley Clark. Now, Stanley Clark, you might know from Return to Forever. This is a classic album, Romantic Warrior. He even played with Keith Richards and Ron Wood in the New Barbarians. And the New Barbarians was the touring band when Ron Wood put out Gimme Some Neck in 1979. And these are, you know, live records. There was no studio album. They toured for Gimme Some Neck. I saw the New Barbarians in Madison Square Garden on that tour. Stanley Clark was the bassist, and Joseph Ziggy Modelis was the drummer. And I got to tell you, at one point, Stanley Clark did a solo, and everybody stood away, and with Ziggy Modelis on drums. And it was pretty much the highlight of the show. You could just see Keith Richards and Ronnie Wood looking at Stanley Clark saying, oh my God, this guy really can play. And it really was like a highlight of the show, because the New Barbarians were really, you know, like a messy, thrown together kind of outfit, and Stanley Clark just took it to another level. Stanley Clark has a lot of really fine solo records. There's a collection called the Basic Collection, as in bass, and a lot of great stuff. He was real popular back in the late 70s when I was in high school. Stanley Clark, an amazing, amazing, amazing bass player. And he is at number 7. Okay, let's keep going. Number 6, well, it's a guy I like to talk about. You talk about pedigrees. I mean, look what this guy has done. We're talking John Wetton, the late, great John Wetton. I mean, John Wetton played with, well, let's take a look. John Wetton played with, amongst others, King Crimson. And you know you got to be great to play with King Crimson. But that wasn't it. He also played with Roxy Music. And he also played with Uriah Heep. He also played with UK, an important part of UK. Formed that band, and that was kind of the predecessor of Asia. Amazing debut album, but other good stuff as well. And he even played with Wishbone Ash for one album, Number the Brave, which is actually a great, great Wishbone Ash album that nobody ever talks about. That's the Wishbone Ash album they did after they tossed Martin Turner out of the band. But that's a story for another day. But John Wetton, I think, is just an incredible, incredible bass player. And it was a sad loss. And anybody who can play with all of these bands, well, that guy is something special. But if that's not enough, well, John Wetton had quite the solo career as well, which you could find on this box set, An Extraordinary Life, which is also a book that came out about his life. John Wetton, a tremendous, tremendous talent, and a very sad loss. Hey, David, we almost had a catastrophe, but we didn't. We'll leave that like that. Okay, John Wetton at number 6. Number 5, well, you know, I'm a huge Rolling Stones fan, and number 5, we're going to be putting in Bill Wyman. Bill Wyman, yeah, I definitely miss him with the Stones. Even just the way he looked. You know, he was a small guy. I'm like 5'6". He was a little guy, little hands. And because he had little hands, little arms, he would have that bass really held upright and just locked in with Charlie Watts. And they called him the Engine Room because of a reason. They just locked in and they would play so well. And the thing about Bill Wyman is, you know, it's kind of a great bass player oftentimes, the opposite of like these bass players that are out front. they're just doing what's necessary for the song. And Bill Wyman always did that so well. But there's times where Bill Wyman really contributed huge amounts. If you look on, like, for instance, Hot Rocks and so many classic songs. I mean, he did so much on Paint It Black. Listen to him on Jumpin' Jack Flash, man. That is awesome. He is all over that. 19th Nervous Breakdown, where he does that dive bombing. That is just fantastic stuff. He's just, he just contributes so much to the Stones that a lot of people kind of forget or didn't really realize. And even later on Some Girls, Miss You, that's just the way he plays with Charlie Watts on Miss You. Fantastic. Start Me Up, even on Undercover, Too Much Blood. Bill Wyman, yeah, and just I actually missed the way he looked. There was something so cool about that little bass player, just hanging out, didn't move around much, just looking around, locked in with Charlie. Yeah, when he left the Stones, that was a bummer. But amazing bass player for the Stones. And that's Bill Wyman at number 5. And right ahead of him at number 4 is the great Paul McCartney. Now, Paul McCartney, what can you say? All the stuff that we're not even just talking about him as a writer and a guitar player and a singer, but as a bass player, I actually think he's by far as musicianship goes, the most talented guy in the Beatles. That's for sure. He's just amazing. So, you got obviously his work with the Beatles, but my favorite McCartney, I've talked about it, is the classic parts of Wings. Wings Over America is my favorite McCartney. I'm not saying better than the Beatles, but that's the stuff that I listen to the most from McCartney. And of course, a lot of when he's great solo, like on Band on the Run, Venus and Mars, he's amazing. But watch him in, the Wings Over America rock show video. He's such a great bass player, and really early in that style of being out front, like I'm talking about these other British bass players. McCartney was there from the get-go doing that. So he's at number 4. At number 3, we're going to be talking about the great, amazing Jaco Pastorius, jazz player. But Jaco played with Joni Mitchell on a bunch of stuff. Hajira. Actually, saw him on Shadows and Light, and there's a movie of this. And this is an amazing jazz band backing Joni Mitchell. If you've never heard this live album, it's great. And there is a video, and I have it on Laserdisc. But Jaco is just incredible on this. Pat Metheny was in the band as well. And Jaco Pastorius is just, he does a bass solo on here with like a drum machine, and it's just unbelievable. But if that's not enough, well, he was in Weather Report. Here's Heavy Weather, classic jazz album. And he also has a classic solo record. There's Jaco Pastorius. Sad life, because, I guess I don't know, maybe drugs and alcohol, and it just went to his head because he thought he was the best bass player in the world, and maybe he was, but he took a beating for it, and it killed him. So it's really a sad loss. Jaco Pastorius at number 3. Number 2, who am I putting for number 2? The late, great Chris Squire. Chris Squire from Yes. I just did a video on another channel called Curless Mania, where we ranked the Yes albums from the 70s. It was a lot of fun. And when you talk about some of the greatest music of all time, and I did a video years ago, it was a series I started doing, like the best album runs, and I put Yes in there. When you talk about the Yes album, and you talk about Fragile, and you talk about Close to the Edge, and then you talk about the live album, which is my most listened to Yes album, Yes songs. And when they came back with Rick Wakeman in 77 for Going for the One, man, rock and roll music, and progressive music in particular, doesn't get any better than this run from Yes. And Chris Squire, way up front in the sound. He's no bass player just holding the root down. He is another lead instrument with Steve Howe on guitar, and it's extraordinary. And if that's not enough, well, his solo record, the one and only Chris Squire solo record, Fish Out of Water, and this is a deluxe edition, is probably the best solo record from any Yes member, except for maybe Rick Wakeman. His first 3 albums I love. But this is a great solo album from Chris Squire. He was a fine backup singer with, singing in harmony with John Anderson. So Chris Squire, my number 2. So who's the number one, my favorite bass player of all time? Is not even close, my friends. That is the late, great John Entwistle of The Who. And what can you say? Thunderfingers. I mean, just listen to The Who. We'll watch The Who in their golden times. John Entwistle took bass playing to another level, and he was so crucial in that sound of the original Who. And in fact, The Who never recovered because even after Keith Moon died, they sounded pretty good, really good. Initially with Kenny Jones, it was a different sound, but it still sounded like The Who. But then when John Entwistle passed away, and they brought in Zach Starkey, who was a perfect replacement for Keith Moon, but they never really replaced John Entwistle. They brought in Pino Palladino, an amazing bass player, and other amazing bass players. And I'm not even saying they couldn't copy John Entwistle to an extent, but they haven't even tried, and maybe Townsend told them that. But you just listen to any Who album, whether it's My Generation, or Tommy, which is like a symphony played by three guys, three musicians. Who's Next? Oh my God, the bass on all of this stuff. It's not bass. It's more than bass. Quadrophenia is incredible. And sometimes John Entwistle would actually fool me because there was times. In fact, somebody once corrected me on the album "Who Are You," which is not one of my favorite Who albums. I don't even think it's that great. But forgetting about the title track, my favorite song on Who Are You is Trick of the Light. And Trick of the Light is a John Entwistle song. And the guitar riff is so massive on there. I'm like, that is the best Who track on this album by far. And then somebody corrected and said, that's not a guitar. That's Entwistle's bass. I didn't even realize it. That's how powerful it is. So Trick of the Light by John Entwistle on Who Are You is extraordinary. But he had a good solo career too. And I have a bunch of his solo stuff. John Entwistle, it's fun just to watch him because he's such an extraordinary bass player. His fingers, the way they move, it's beyond belief. And it's a loss that the Who never really recovered from. Maybe they didn't even want to try. So there's my top 10. Number 1, John Entwistle. Number 2, Chris Squire. Number 3, Jaco Pastorius. Number 4, Paul McCartney. Number 5, Bill Wyman, Rolling Stones. Number 6, John Wetton. Number 7, Stanley Clark. Number 8, John Camp from Renaissance. Number 9, Martin Turner, Wishbone Ash. And number 10, Phil Lesh from The Grateful Dead. I hope you enjoyed it. That's my top 10. You're like, Alan, what about this one? And what about this one? Well, some runners-ups. Certainly Jack Cassidy of the Jefferson Airplane and Hot Tuna. I actually listen to Hot Tuna more than the Jefferson Airplane. Listen to like Double Dose, one of the all-time great live albums. Yeah, Jack Cassidy is amazing. He's just shy outside the top 10. And for American bass player, he's so up front. He's very like in that British style. Who else? Well, great bass players, you really have to think about Sting. I don't listen to the Police that much, really, but I have all of the Police albums, and they're incredible. There's a reason why they went from, being a little new wave punk rock band very quickly to superstardom and selling out Shea Stadium, and then they packed it in. Well, Sting packed it in because it was like, where else are we going to take this? And his solo career was really amazing too, and still is. He's an incredible artist. Those original Sting albums are fantastic, and he's a great songwriter, and he plays really good guitar, and he's a great singer, and he's, I guess a musical genius to a certain extent. Now, a lot of you are going to say, where's Jack Bruce? And no argument, Jack Bruce is an amazing bass player. He's just outside my top 10. And the reason why really is, believe it or not, I'm not a huge fan of Cream. Yeah, I have I think I have most of their albums. They're a band that I just don't listen to all that much. And I even have some Jack Bruce solo as well. So I appreciate Cream, but all of that jam, and I really got to be in the mood for that. And I'm really not in the mood for it that often. So when I listen to Cream, I tend to listen to the tighter, more hit-based stuff, more commercial type stuff. When they go on and on and on, I'm like, all right, guys, come on. But that's just me unless I'm in the mood. There are some other amazing bass players that I thought of right away, that really not necessarily in bands. Tony Levin, who's played with Peter Gabriel and Bowie and a lot of other people. He's just incredible. He plays that big stick thing. I mean, that guy's like off the chart. There's a lot of amazing bass players. Bootsy Collins and Larry Graham from Sly and the Family Stone. Carol Kay, who is a legendary bass player, but she's the studio person that kind of didn't want to get into that. And there's a lot of modern bass players that are incredible, just music that I don't listen to. Flea is certainly one. Who's that guy? Les Claypool is an amazing bass player. I almost put Rick Danko up here in the band. He's an amazing bass player, and I love the band, but I can't put everybody in here. So there is a lot of amazing bass players. Somebody's going to throw out John Deacon from Queen. A lot of great bass riffs for sure. So I didn't include that as well. So let me know your top 10 favorite bass players. It's fun to do this. It's all not scientific. It's who we love. So let me know who you love, what you think of my choices. I hope you had a good week. I hope you have a great weekend upcoming. If you're new to my channel, hit subscribe. Now, go to my playlist. There is a playlist called Discographies by Topic. There are over 90 videos there that are based on concepts. So I even have a video already from a long time ago, favorite bass licks. And I got best drum openings. And I got favorite guitar solos. These are videos I did a long time ago. So if you like this kind of stuff, go to Discographies by Topic. There's 90 plus videos there of topics like this kind of stuff where I rank albums and discuss it. I think you'll really like it. Again, thank you so much. If you're new to my channel, hit subscribe. Check out the other videos. And I'll speak to you next time on The Alan Rosenberg Show.